Hey everybody, Tech Checker here today, and I'm going to show you how I made my really thin slices or pieces of foam. So what I did is I actually went dumpster diving a couple months ago. They were building a house near my house, and there was a whole bunch of this extra 2-inch foam in the dumpster. And I saw an opportunity. So I went in and I grabbed it, and this is what I used to make my really thin foam pieces for my boards and accent pieces and whatnot. So what I use is I believe it's a 10-inch miter saw, chop saw, and the important part here, yeah, it's 10-inch. The important part is using a fine tooth blade. Yeah, you don't want to use one of those ones made for wood. You're gonna tear this stuff up, and that's just not gonna be good. All right, so what I do is I have actually measured. I don't know if you can see. I measured right there. There's a little black dot, and I measured that based off of knowing the width of my blade. It's going to be almost 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little less than 1/8 of an inch, that it's actually going to cut off and leave. So that way then I can get something this thin. All right, so when I come back, we're going to go ahead and cut off a couple pieces. All right, so line up the edge of your piece with your dot that you marked, or however it is that you're choosing to measure. And then you want to do this cut relatively quickly. So that way then it doesn't burn and melt too much. You want to cut rather than a melt. All right, so here we go. Let's give this a shot. Okay, so that one turned out okay. It's a little thicker than I wanted, but that might be because I didn't start my edge properly. So some of this is a little bit of trial and error. I'm gonna try again. Luckily I got this for free, so it doesn't really matter if I mess up. All right, let's try it again. There we go. So that is relatively the thickness that we want from a rough cut. So I can go ahead and cut as many of these as I want. Okay, now that you've got your stack, we need to make at least one surface nice and smooth so that it either, replicates a wooden surface or maybe concrete or marble or whatever it is that you're planning on doing. So depending on what it is that you're planning on doing, you may need to do one surface or both surfaces, but we need to sand it. So typically I'm just doing one surface. So I go and I take a look and try and figure out which surface is already the smoothest. That's my surface to sand. Now, because this stuff is so incredibly thin, you really need to be careful. And sometimes I go ahead and just use my sanding block. Sand it down. You need to be careful. So I shouldn't talk while I'm sanding, but you need to be careful while you're sanding that you're not putting too much downward pressure
while you're holding it. Otherwise what happens, because this stuff is so thin, is it will buckle, and then you basically have ruined your piece. All right, so we went from this, which as you can see is quite rough, to this, which is nice and smooth. And your back edge is still pretty rough, and if you want to, you can certainly do that. But you're gonna wanna do that on all of these, and you're gonna wanna get your edges if you need to. For mine, I'm probably gonna be cutting some of the edges off, so I don't need to. All right, so that's how I make my really thin pieces of foam. I hope that's helpful.
Technical